Have you ever received a phone call from your doctor after a routine blood test, and the first thing you hear is your kidney numbers are getting worse? For a second, you don't know what to say because you felt fine. You were still walking around, still eating what you thought was healthy, still trying to do the right thing. But that is the frightening part about kidney damage. It does not always come with pain. It does not always give you a warning. Sometimes the first real warning is hidden inside your lab results. Your potassium goes up, your creatinine rises, your GFR starts to fall, and suddenly your doctor begins talking about dialysis. For many seniors, the hidden trigger is potassium, a mineral sitting quietly inside foods they eat every single day. Not strange foods, everyday foods, foods that may even look healthy. So before your next lab result catches you off guard, let me show you 8 low-potassium foods that may help protect your kidneys and keep your numbers more stable. And before we begin, tell me where you're watching from today. I love seeing this community from all across America. Stay with me until food number 8 because it may be one of the gentlest foods for weak kidneys, and most seniors have never even heard about it. Number 1, white rice. I've seen many individuals avoid it because they've been told it's high in carbohydrates. But for kidneys that are struggling, white rice can work as a pressure release valve rather than a problem. I recall a gentleman in his early 60s who walked into my clinic afraid. His potassium levels continued to rise. His creatinine level increased and his GFR fell below 55. He told me, "Doctor, I only eat healthy foods like brown rice, whole grains, and plenty of vegetables." What he didn't comprehend was that his kidneys were already unable to handle the mineral load. When we replace those items with correctly portioned white rice, his potassium levels corrected within weeks. Not because white rice is magical, but because it stopped overloading his kidneys. Here is the science behind it. 1 cup of cooked white rice has approximately 50 to 60 milligrams of potassium, which is significantly below the 200 milligrams threshold for low potassium. Brown rice, in comparison, contains roughly 3 times more potassium and phosphorus, putting additional load on damaged filtering systems. When your kidneys can eliminate potassium efficiently, every milligram counts, and white rice provides energy without putting your kidneys to work overtime. When used appropriately, white rice can aid in another key way. It is low in fiber residue, easy to digest, and soft on persons suffering from uremia, nausea, or a lack of appetite. Cooking it in more water and draining it lowers mineral residue, making it even safer when paired with low potassium vegetables or clean proteins such as egg whites. White rice becomes a foundation food, not a filler, and provides strategic support for kidney survival. And this is critical to comprehend. White rice is not about enjoyment. It is about management. You can manage potassium spikes, creatinine drift, and the rate at which your GFR drops. When patients stop fighting their kidneys and begin feeding them intelligently, labs frequently stabilize sooner than expected. However, knowing this is insufficient because there is another common meal that many people consume without thinking that can either protect your kidneys just as effectively or quietly damage everything you're attempting to correct. After learning how white rice can relieve pressure on damaged kidneys, the following dish typically surprises people even more because it has been erroneously classified as something you should avoid immediately. Number 2, simple white spaghetti. Many patients tell me they stopped eating pasta out of fear that it might aggravate their illness, when in truth the problem was never the pasta itself, but what their kidneys were forced to process along with it. I remember a woman in her late 50s who sat across from me, fatigued and frustrated. Her creatinine levels were rising. Her GFR was dropping into the low 50s, and she felt continually weak. She had eliminated pasta, rice and bread, replacing them totally with nutritious grains and beans. Her lab results did not improve, rather they worsened. When we reintroduced simply plain pasta, that was appropriately portioned and free of heavy sauces, her potassium levels stabilized. Her appetite returned, and for the first time in months, she felt energized. Here's why it happened. A 100-gram portion of cooked plain pasta has approximately 30 to 40 milligrams of potassium, putting it well below the low potassium threshold. Whole grain or legume-based pastas, on the other hand, can triple or quadruple that potassium burden, while also including phosphorus, which failing kidneys cannot effectively eliminate. For kidneys that are already losing filtering ability, the additional burden quietly accelerates damage. Plain spaghetti also has a psychological impact that is often disregarded. Kidney sufferers frequently eat insufficiently because worry replaces nutrition. Pasta delivers safe calories without excessive protein, which helps to minimize muscle wasting and unintentional weight loss, both of which have been linked to poor results in chronic renal disease. When boiled properly and lightly washed, it becomes one of the most kidney-friendly starches available. But here's a hidden hazard that most people overlook. What's put on top of pasta is the threat, not the pasta itself. Tomato sauces, cheese, heavy toppings, and processed meats may quickly transform a kidney-friendly dish into a potassium and salt bomb. When pasta is combined with low-potassium veggies or clean proteins, it becomes a stabilizing agent rather than a concern. And this is significant because protecting your kidneys isn't about deprivation. It's about eating things that soothe the system rather than inflame it. When used correctly, pasta helps to produce that calm, allowing your kidneys to filter at a rate that is manageable. But knowing this isn't enough, since there's another common dish on most kitchen counters that appears innocent but can quietly raise or drop potassium levels depending on one important decision you may not even be aware you are making. After pasta, many renal patients inadvertently impede their progress by eating bread, which they feel is a healthier choice, more particularly the distinction between white and whole grain breads. Number 3, white bread. I've seen several patients convert to whole wheat believing they're protecting their bodies, only to quietly overload their kidneys day after day. One man in his early 70s told me, "Dr. Johnny, you did everything correctly. I gave up white bread years ago. His potassium levels continued to rise. His creatinine levels remained unstable, and his GFR continued to decline." When we looked closely, the issue was not how much bread he ate, but which bread. After replacing dense-seated whole grain loaves with basic white bread, his potassium levels stopped rising after meals. Here's a science that most people never hear. A single slice of white bread normally provides 30 to 40 milligrams of potassium. However, whole grain or multigrain breads can range from 70 to well over 130 milligrams per slice, particularly when seeds, bran, or phosphate additions are used. For kidneys that are already struggling to drain potassium, the difference adds up quickly, not in a single spectacular instant, but gradually slice by slice. White bread is also naturally low in phosphorus, which is more important than many people realize. Phosphorus retention promotes renal damage and exacerbates tiredness, bone loss, and CKD. When your goal is stability rather than perfection, white bread can serve as a smart calorie source that sustains your body without overworking your kidneys. When used correctly, 1 to 2 slices per day, lightly toasted without salty spreads or processed meats, can help patients retain energy, reduce muscle breakdown, and avoid fear-driven undereating, which frequently worsens outcomes. This is not about going backwards in nutrition. Rather, it is about meeting your kidneys where they are right now. However, knowing which bread to buy is insufficient because protein choices, even clean ones, can quietly affect whether your kidneys recover or continue to degrade. After fixing carbohydrates like rice, pasta, and bread, the subject automatically switches, since every kidney patient eventually asks the same question in a frightened voice. Number 4, egg whites. But doctor, what about protein? And this is where egg whites discreetly become one of the most effective weapons for protecting weaker kidneys while maintaining strength and life. I recall a gentleman in his late 60s who had begun skipping protein almost entirely due to fear. His creatinine level was high, his GFR was decreasing, and he feared protein itself was damaging his kidneys. What he didn't grasp was that the main threat wasn't protein, but the wrong kind of protein. When we added egg whites to his meals, his labs normalized, his muscle strength improved, and his energy gradually returned. For the first time, he no longer had to choose between his kidneys and his body. Here's why egg whites differ. One big egg white contains around 50 to 55 milligrams of potassium, almost no phosphorus, and provides high-quality protein with a very minimal nitrogen waste burden. Whole eggs, while beneficial for healthy people, contain substantially more phosphorus and fat, which weakened kidneys struggle to eliminate. Excess nitrogen and phosphorus in chronic renal disease promote urea accumulation, tiredness, and inflammation. Egg whites avoid the entire difficulty. Clinically, egg whites assist, protect muscle mass and albumin levels without increasing creatinine levels as many animal proteins do. 2 to 4 egg whites per day, cooked or softly scrambled without salt or butter, gives structure and nutrition without causing potassium spikes or exacerbating uremic symptoms. This balance is crucial since muscle loss is associated to accelerated renal failure and poorer outcomes. What most individuals don't realize is that improper protein limitation can be as detrimental as excessive protein consumption. Egg whites allow kidneys to rest while the body remains resilient, which frequently determines whether patients stabilize or spiral downward. However, understanding this alone is insufficient because there is a popular breakfast dish that many people rely on every morning that can either softly support your kidneys or discreetly ruin all you're attempting to safeguard. After discussing egg whites and protein safety, mornings quietly become a watershed moment because breakfast is often when kidney damage slows or accelerates without anybody realizing. And one of the most misunderstood breakfast items for kidney patients is something so simple. Number 5, plain corn flakes. Most people either ignore it as junk cereal or unintentionally replace it with alternatives that are considerably more hazardous to compromised kidneys. I dealt with a woman in her early 60s whose potassium levels remained elevated despite her best efforts. She proudly informed me that she ate healthy cereal every morning, including whole grains, bran seeds, and nuts. What she didn't realize was that her breakfast alone was delivering a potassium burden that her kidneys could no longer handle. After we switched her to plain cornflakes and a low potassium milk replacement, her potassium levels stabilized within a month. Nothing extraordinary happened, except that the strain on her kidneys suddenly subsided. Here's what science demonstrates. 1 cup of plain cornflakes has approximately 20 to 30 milligrams of potassium, placing it well below the 200 milligram low potassium threshold. Compare that to bran or whole grain cereals, which can contain more than 200 milligrams per serving even before milk is added. For kidneys with a decreasing GFR, the difference is significant. Cornflakes also contain relatively little phosphorus and protein, which helps to reduce nitrogen waste and electrolyte stress during the most sensitive time of day. Cornflakes, when used wisely, provide mild energy without overworking the kidneys. The key is what you pour on top. Regular milk can include 300 to 400 milligrams of potassium in a single cup, rapidly negating the advantage. Choosing rice milk or low potassium almond milk keeps the meal kidney friendly and predictable. When it comes to avoiding unexpected lab spikes, predictability is more important than perfectionism. Breakfast should relax your system, not test it. And for many renal patients, cornflakes provide just that. They provide a steady start that safeguards the remainder of the day. But knowing this is insufficient because there is a typical snack that people reach for without thinking that can either ease their kidneys or gradually push them toward failure. After breakfast, many kidney patients' danger zone moves to something nearly no one thinks about snacking. Number 6, unsalted popcorn. This is where good intentions frequently fail because hunger takes control and decisions are chosen without regard for potassium. Surprisingly, one of the safest snack options for impaired kidneys is unsalted popcorn. I remember a patient who kept asking me why his potassium levels were usually higher in the evening, despite the fact that he ate properly at meals. When we looked closely, the solution was not lunch or supper, but the snacks in between. Crackers, almonds, chips, and so-called healthy snacks were silently accumulating potassium and sodium throughout the day. When we replaced those snacks with air-popped unsalted popcorn, his nighttime potassium spikes went away within weeks. Nothing else changed but that one behavior. Here's why popcorn works when made right. When unseasoned, 1 cup of air-popped popcorn has only approximately 25 to 30 milligrams of potassium, essentially no phosphorus additions and almost no sodium. Compare that to almonds or granola bars, which can include 150 to 300 milligrams of potassium per serving, sometimes more than a whole kidney-friendly meal. This makes a huge difference for kidneys that are already straining to control electrolytes. Popcorn also provides something that many kidney patients sorely require: volume without excess. You can eat 3 cups of air-popped popcorn while being below low potassium limits, which helps control appetite without causing electrolyte stress. The fiber also promotes gentle digestion, which is very beneficial for patients suffering from constipation caused by fluid restriction or phosphate binders. The key, of course, is moderation and preparation. Butter, salt, cheese powders, and microwave additions quickly transform popcorn into a kidney threat. Made at home, delicately popped with a tiny amount of kidney-safe oil popcorn becomes a snack that satisfies without punishment, which is uncommon in chronic kidney disease. And this is significant because kidney protection is more than just what you eat at meals. It is also what you reach for when no one is looking. Small snacks consumed regularly can subtly influence your lab findings, but knowing this isn't enough because there's another common meal people eat for rapid energy that appears innocent on the surface but can drastically alter your potassium balance with a single pick. Number 7, plain white bagel. Following snacks, the next hidden hazard appears in situations of low energy when people simply want something comforting and fast. This is where bagels enter the picture, and many kidney patients are given incorrect counsel. Most people hear the word bagel and immediately think of too much carbohydrate, which is bad. So they either avoid it entirely or replace it with options that discreetly cause considerably more damage to fragile kidneys. I recall a gentleman in his late 60s who was fast losing weight and often felt fatigued. His GFR had plummeted below 50. His creatinine was growing and he could scarcely eat because everything felt dangerous. He had completely eliminated bagels and bread, substituting them with protein bars and multigrain products. When we checked his test results, we discovered that the problem was not a lack of calories, but rather a high potassium intake from items he thought were better. Reintroducing a plain white bagel in the appropriate portion restored his energy without increasing his potassium levels. This is what science tells us. A regular plain white bagel contains approximately 80 to 120 milligrams of potassium, depending on size and brand. When portions are regulated, the potassium content remains low. Compare that to multigrain seeded or whole wheat bagels, which can easily contain more than 200 to 300 milligrams of potassium, especially when phosphate additions are included. For kidneys with decreased filtration, this differential alone can determine whether potassium remains stable or gradually creeps into the danger zone. Plain bagels give dense, consistent calories with relatively little protein or phosphorus. This is more important than people realize. Unintentional weight loss and muscle wasting and chronic renal disease are associated with a faster decline and a greater mortality rate. A half to one small plain bagel with kidney-safe spreads such as cream cheese or a thin layer of unsalted peanut butter will help sustain strength without taxing the kidneys. The true risk is not the bagel itself, but what is put on it. Tomato sauces, cured meats, salty cheeses, and processed toppings may quickly transform a healthy diet into a potassium and sodium trap. When used, simply a plain bagel becomes strategic fuel rather than a mistake. And this is important since kidney survival is more than just minerals. It is about having enough energy to keep your body strong, as your kidneys struggle to keep up. However, knowing this is insufficient because there is a starch that most people have never heard of that provides calories while containing nearly little potassium, and it could be one of the safest solutions when kidney function is genuinely compromised. After learning how meals like bagels can supply energy without overwhelming the kidneys, the debate takes an unexpected turn, because there is a starch that most people completely neglect. However, for vulnerable kidneys, it can feel like a lifeline. Number 8. Tapioca. Tapioca is the name given to that food. It rarely comes up in kidney conversations, not because it is unsuccessful, but because it is almost too quiet to be noticed. I recall a patient in her early 70s whose renal function had deteriorated to the point where almost every meal caused nausea and exhaustion. She was scared to eat because of the potassium spikes, and she was losing weight steadily. Something happened when we introduced tapioca in small regulated portions. Her labs did not fluctuate wildly. Her appetite returned, and for the first time in months, eating did not feel like a gamble. It wasn't a cure, but it did provide comfort, which is important since the kidneys are constantly under strain. Here's how tapioca works so brilliantly. Cooked tapioca pearls have essentially no potassium, around 1 milligram per tablespoon phosphorus or sodium. Tapioca, unlike oats, cream of wheat, or even rice-based porridges, provides calories without requiring the kidneys to filter electrolytes that they cannot discharge. This type of dietary neutrality is extremely beneficial for those with a declining GFR. Tapioca is also very easy to digest. Heavy foods can cause discomfort in those taking uremia medication and experiencing adverse effects or having a poor appetite, which leads to undereating, which accelerates the decline. Tapioca delivers warmth, texture, and energy while preventing irritation and mineral overload. When made with water or low-potassium milk, alternatives, and mildly flavored with cinnamon or vanilla, it becomes soothing rather than stressful. Most individuals are unaware that in the later stages of renal disease, calories become medicine. The goal moves from ideal nutrition to safe nourishment food that keeps the body functioning as the kidneys battle to keep up. Tapioca quietly does this function better than practically any other starch, and that is why tapioca deserves a place on this list. It is simple, gentle, low in potassium, and useful when weak kidneys need steady energy without extra mineral stress. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. And don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe to Health Tips 60+ for more science-backed tips to stay strong and independent after 60. Remember, this aging doesn't have to mean getting weaker. With the right daily habits, you can wake up every morning feeling stronger. The choice is yours. Have a blessed day, and as always, breathe easy, my friend.